Greetings, everyone. I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. And now the Everybody Loves Raymond reviews have entered Season 2, Season Numero Dos, which means we go from the red case to the green case. Like Season 1, this set was a Christmas gift. This was the following Christmas, if I remember correctly. And it was after that that I started buying them more or less as they were coming out. Although a later season, I believe I mentioned in the first video in this series, I had to buy twice. So it's a lot skinnier than the others. It's like the size of one of these ones instead of being super thick. Which makes me wonder, why didn't they just make them all that size from the get-go? But I guess being set like that kind of makes the set look a little bit nicer, at least at the time. Has the same amount of commentaries as Season 1, just 2 commentaries. And they're on later episodes as well. The finale doesn't even get a commentary. It was, I believe, starting with Season 3 that they started doing commentaries on more than just 2 episodes. When they're like, oh, these people actually like them. And unlike Season 1, this actually has some deleted scenes. Ooh, that should be interesting. I think it's like in a reel at the end instead of it being an option to watch it on the episode like later seasons. So I probably won't be talking about the deleted scenes until it gets to Season 3 where we can start watching them along with the episode. Of course, first episode of Season 2 is called Ray's on TV, and it's a very simple premise. Ray is asked by his buddy Kevin, who we've only seen in one episode so far, and that was Captain Nemo. Here we find out he's a buddy from work. He works along with Ray and with Andy. Andy is his stats guy. And Kevin goes on TV with Roy Firestone talking about the Mets amongst other teams. And on this edition of Firestone's show, they need a 4th person. And he asks for a newspaper guy, and he's like, hey, we can go with Ray. So Ray's going on TV. He tells Deborah, his family, they're all excited. They're telling everyone around the neighborhood to watch. Ray's, of course, nervous. And having taken acting, I can say that the scene where they're talking about how they feel before they go live, very relatable, because before you do a performance, even if it's in front of just colleagues for a grade, you're going to feel nervous. You feel it down here, and as my teacher said, if you don't feel nervous before a performance, something's wrong. So all of these, even these professionals feeling nervous before going on the air, it makes sense. And one of them even tells Ray, I always throw up before one live performance, and Ray's like getting like, ugh. And you can even tell as the show starts he's a little nervous because he's out of his element. Which I think Ray, as in Ray Romano, is probably channeling a little bit of his insecurities about acting from the first season and a little bit in this one into this part. Because this was his real first acting thing. It's a little different than stand-up comedy. So he's channeling that into it, and it comes across pretty naturally. But that's just me spitballing because there's no commentary on this episode, and there's nothing about it on IMDb that speaks about that, but it's one of those things like I wouldn't be surprised if that's what he did. As can be expected, the episode goes off without a hitch. Everyone's like, yeah, you're doing a good job, Ray. You did good. And of course, later on, when Deborah's talking to him, it's like, you can tell that there's something she wants to say, but she's biting her tongue, but then Ray finally gets it out of her. She noticed he was having trouble pronouncing certain words, which I think that's something everyone can relate to, because everyone has some words they have trouble pronouncing. Me, years ago, I had trouble pronouncing philanthropist in philanthropy. Even sometimes I gotta, like before I say it, quickly correct myself. It was just something about the cadence of the syllables that it always would come up and be like, philanthropa. It'd be like that. So him mispronouncing words like asterisk, like, even then I almost just mispronounced it. Cinnamon, ask. He says asked. It's just like subtle things where you can tell what they're saying, but the way she's getting on him, it's like, really, Deborah? I can understand you noticing it, but it's something you probably should just bury and then try not to make a big deal out of it. The only reason I can think why she's making a big deal out of it is because Ray's a writer, and she's like, huh? But there's a difference between when you write something and when you say it. You know, it's just like if your accent makes something sound weird. You know, like, the word sounds different when you say it, even though it's spelled the same way. Like, take a couple state names, Missouri. Some say Missouri, some say Missouri because of the accent. It's kind of a similar vibe. Now, because of this, Ray gets super self-conscious, goes and talks with his parents, and we find out They even noticed some of it, but they weren't saying it, which leads to a whole thing about them lying all their life. And this leads to one of my favorite little exchanges where Marie says, Ray, we told you you were a good writer, so you would think you were a good writer, and then someone gave you a job. That's what parents do. They all lie to their kids for their own good. Ray argues, like, they believe in their kids. No, they don't. Which, watching it now as an adult, I'm like, Marie. You just want to reach through the TV and strangle her. Not the only time you ever want to think that with how Marie acts throughout the show, but with that, it's like, Marie, you ever think that some people actually do believe in their kids? They want realistic expectations. They want them to think realistically, but whatever your dream is, you want to try, go, good, we believe in you. I could say that from firsthand experience. They don't just say something and think something else, but that's just Frank and Marie in a nutshell as parents. I mean, they raise good kids, but you think they probably should be on that list of people that should not have had children. There are worse people, even though it goes with my existence. My mother is one of them. A friend's mother is one of them. But Frank and Marie would be like around the middle part of the list. Of course, all of this, both from Deborah, from Frank and Marie, really gets on Ray's nerves and makes him very self-conscious, which makes his second appearance on the show that night worse. And you could even tell that his cohorts on the show are like, okay, this is not as good as last night. They're just looking at him like, Ray? They don't say anything, but you can tell they're thinking, Ray? Something you wanted to tell us? You've been drinking tonight, Ray? Ray? Earth to Ray? He's just so self-conscious that he's second-guessing himself. It's like, you just go with it. I could tell you from doing these things, there's sometimes where you just turn a flub and then go with it. Or just ignore a flub, go with it. Now, of course, you can do multiple takes and edit and all that, but on live TV, like Ray is, you don't have that luxury. So, him really stumbling over himself and going like that, he's really screwing himself. And it makes the show not as good, which I think Frank sums it up best with a line he says when Ray comes in. I could have eaten a bowl of alphabet soup and crapped a better interview. Frank. Always blunt, very honest. The only one who seems to have enjoyed it a little bit is Robert, but Robert always seems to take pleasure in Ray when he gets a little bit of misfortune, but there's always times where he'll actually act like a brother and comfort him, like we'll see that in some later episodes. But this one, he had it taped, but he eventually hands it over to Deborah, and then the episode ends. From a writing standpoint, it is a very simplistic episode. Definitely feels like it could have been a Season 1 episode, and it's a nice one to start Season 2 off with. It feels like a nice little continuation of the first season. And it also feels, this is just me spitballing in, that this might have been an idea they had for Season 1 that they decided to wait a while on, or they hadn't fully developed, or they came up with it near the end, and they're like, yeah, we'll use it for Season 2 when we get renewed. And they're like, yeah, we'll put it at the beginning. And of course, this episode is written by Tucker Colley, who's written many, many episodes of Everybody Loves Raymond. I mean, for this season alone, he wrote some of my favorite episodes, and Good Girls, among others. Definitely his weakest of the episodes of this season, but it's a nice little one for an opener. Any later in the season probably would have felt a little weird, but for an opener, it's good. And, nice little way to work in some sports people. You got Ray Firestone, and then, of course, you got James Worthy. I had to actually look at his name there. And, of course, Kevin in a nice little role. Nice to see Kevin James. And, of course, character of Andy in one thing at the beginning, seeing him complain about Kevin. And watching Kevin James with his little thing here, it's like, I actually like his character of Kevin, the sports guy, better than Doug from King of Queens, at least when it comes to being on this show. In the context of his own show, hard to say. Which is why it's like, they should never have brought Doug over into the show. I understand why they did it, just to give his show a little bit of a rub. But it's like, could have still had him play Kevin throughout the rest of the show, but I guess timing and all that, just sprinkle him in every now and then. Or at the very least, have Doug appear a little bit more often than like the 2 times Doug did appear, but neither here nor there. We get Gianni out of it later, and I like Gianni as a background character better. All in all, it was a pretty fun episode, nice little opener. There's not really much to say about this episode. Standard sitcom fare. Ray has an issue with his parents and Deborah. Gets self-conscious, ruins his second appearance, and it goes from there. Just one-note jokes all throughout, and that's why there's not really much to say about this episode. It's fun, but not really much to analyze. I usually do watch it whenever I marathon the show. I don't skip it, but it's usually just because it's the opener of the season. I kind of feel obligated to watch it.